of people don't know either that you actually trained with Dan Severn to prepare him for his UFC debut. So,
yeah.
I want to just tell us about what it was like training him for pro wrestling, and also what it was like training him for UFC, which was kind of an unknown sport at the time.
Yeah. I met Dan Severn through Dennis Kaspowitz again. Dennis was a amateur wrestler, was an AAU champion in Michigan, and was a player coach for the U.S. Olympic team. And Dennis knew Dan. Dan had expressed an interest in getting professional wrestling. I met Dan, and at the time there was a company in Japan that was called UWFI, and it was a company that was kind of the precursor to what modern day MMA is kind of. It was a group of guys Japanese wrestlers who kind of came out and said, pro wrestling is BS here in Japan, and we're going to do it for real. And they just changed the style of pro wrestling, where they didn't shoot guys in the ropes. When they kicked you, they really kicked you. They only struck you open hand, but they really struck you. So they worked stiff. When they put a hold on, they just worked the holds, the submission holds. Every match ended with either a knockout or a submission, and it was as fake as regular pro wrestling because the finish was predetermined. And that's the only thing that's fake in wrestling, is that the finish is predetermined. And the same goes with UWFI. They also went a step further, that they only used, especially foreign guys, they only used guys with like legitimate backgrounds, notable legitimate backgrounds. So like Gary Albright became a really big star for that company because he had a really significant amateur career. So I knew when I met Dan that there was a good opportunity that if I trained Dan, that Dan could possibly go there. Because one of the things, unless you're the exception, most of the time the rule is that amateur wrestlers, it's very tough for them to make that transition from amateur wrestling into the mindset of being a professional wrestler. There are a couple, Brock and Kurt and numerous other ones that have had extensive amateur careers, but a large part of them, it's really hard to, especially if they've done it for a very long time like Dan, to really successfully make that transition. So we met, Dan got, I started training Dan and then for professional wrestling, and then he got the opportunity to go to UWFI. And then Phyllis Lee, a lady that worked with Sabu and X-Pac and the Malenkos and myself, and she was like a den mother to wrestlers. I mean, she helped everybody out. Dan expressed an interest in going to the UFC. I think it was at the time they had only 2 pay-per-views or 3. I think it was 3.
I think he started in the 4th.
He started in 4th, UFC 4. And he tried to get into the UFC to go fight and was unsuccessful. And then Phyllis went and got him in, got him into the UFC 4, into Oklahoma City, or it was Tulsa. We flew into Oklahoma City, and they approached me about training him because I had some background in martial arts and stuff. And to be quite honest, I mean, it's not like we spoke earlier. We didn't know what we were doing. Nobody knew what they were doing. It's not like it back then was not like it is now. I thought it was better back then, because the real heart of it was taking different people with different styles and putting them against each other to see which style was really the best. And now MMA has become its own style. I mean, it has its ground game, its boxing, its kicks. It covers everything, and you kind of know the other fighter is going to train a certain way, and he's going to work on certain things. You had no idea. For one, we didn't know who was going to even be at the fight. Didn't know anybody was going to be at this.
Sumo wrestler or karate.
Well, you didn't know who the other competitors were. 1, 2, if you didn't know who you were going to fight, because it was a true tournament, because you had to fight 3 times.
Yeah.
And 3, you might fight a sumo, like you said, a sumo guy the first time, a boxer the second time. There was a boxer, big black guy, boxer in there. I think he lost his first fight, but man, he was jacked. And if he'd have hit somebody with a punch, that'd have been it. Wouldn't matter what you'd have done with him. So you didn't know what to prepare for. You didn't know how to prepare for it. You know, we were just shooting in the dark. You know, Dan went there and he had to fight some Muay Thai guy in the first round. And then the second guy was a long style karate. And then the third guy was Hoist Gracie. It's like, well, how do you prepare for that? And, you know, neither one of us had any experience with it. But he did great. And then he went on to have a great career with it, you know.